but I actually can't, I can't stream the minimap like I have in the past. So, okay. So let's get into this game. So now SK Telecom banning away Kalista, they ban away Xayah. Blank is still in. Okay, Sejuani picked first for Misfits, responded by taking away the Tristana this time, and taking the Jarvan. Sivir now being highlighted by Misfits. Karma being picked, and again, SKT are not privy to if the Karma is able to be flexed into mid or support. Faker going to his Ryze. The Ryze has 100% win rate all time, but it's Korean Ryze. So basically, much like Korean Jace, there's Korean Ryze. Just seems to end up being a lot better in the hands of a Korean team. A little bit difficult to pilot and coordinate around. Obviously, benefits a lot if you're extremely mechanically adept. Ryze coming out for Faker. He's basically saying no fucking around. Okay. After the bans come in, the Shen is being targeted away, thinking that maybe SK Telecom wants to just put Huni on that Shen so that he can protect Bang. Maybe they're thinking that SK Telecom have realized that a lot of their problems are stemming from the bottom lane and the advantages that Hansama and Ignar are getting for Misfits. Really, this has been a super carry from Ignar, though. Like, every single game, Ignar has just been fucking shoving his dick in SKT. So Trundle being picked up, and this basically says that, hey, if you pick Cho'Gath, we got the answer to it. And then I guess that they're not giving Alphari credit to pick another champion that would be good enough against the Trundle. If you actually do pick the Gnar, if you're good enough, or if you're adept enough at like Trundle or something, you can actually pillar him out of his hop, and that's super, super bad. I love this thing. It reminds me of like Pokemon Stadium, by the way. Okay, so they end up running out the team composition with a Braum. The Braum is super interesting. You're obviously going to be able to block the Sejuani ultimate. You can block the Karma Mantra Q. You can block the Sivir throwing her little fucking boomerang thingy. I don't actually know if you can block the Feral Scream, but I mean, Braum seems like he's able to basically block whatever the fuck he wants. So here are the final team compositions. So the interesting things here is that top lane is fragile. If Trundle ends up getting ahead, it doesn't mean that Cho'Gath is out of it, because Trundle can't actually exert pressure over Cho'Gath in a way that would just make it like super, super obnoxious. It's not like he can do in certain lane matchups where, like, for instance, if Trundle actually gets ahead in certain lane matchups, he can actually just continuously take trades underneath the opponent's turret and then restore his health using his ultimate and using his passive, and then obviously his life regeneration, etc. And then he can basically whittle down the opposing top. The problem now is that even if Trundle gets a lead up in top lane, even if he tries to zone the Cho'Gath, it doesn't actually really amount to much, because the Cho'Gath's passive sustain is already obnoxious as it is. So one of the things here, though, is that Blank obviously has a lot of potential up in top lane, lots of potential in mid lane. You can see the Power of Evil also not going cleanse, so that's going to be a pretty important part for ganks that involve Blank. Obviously Ryze with the Rune Prism. And so basically what Power of Evil is also trying to do is they're trying to wait to get to the point where they come online with double teleport. The other thing about the double teleport is they're going to try to obviously attack Bang and Wolf down in the bottom half of the map. Looks like Infernal Drake is the first one to spawn. Super, super important for both team comps, but obviously a little bit more important for SK Telecom. They benefit more from the raw stats on the Trundle, the Jarvan, the Ryze, the Tristana than Misfits would just on the Karma, the Sejuani, the Cho'Gath, which obviously these two have a little bit of diminishing returns on the Infernal Drake compared to the opposing champions on SKT. So the other thing that's going on down in bottom lane is the Tristana puts a little bit more weight on the carry, given the way that the team compositions are set up and the Braum nullifying a lot of the components of Misfits. So a lot of the pressure is actually on Maxlore this game to try to somehow find openings into bottom lane, because the other lane that he can look to find openings in is going to be up in top lane. But that's also a lane that we already talked about is integral to SK Telecom, because Blank wants to be devoting a lot of attention to Faker and Huni, and then trusting Bang and Wolf to try to be able to survive on their own, especially given the fact that they're red side, so they have a naturally defensive side of the map. And this is a little bit problematic for Maxler, because we've already talked about blue side junglers that don't make much use of going into top lane. So let's jump right into the game. All players just going with a point. If there was going to be a team that could have looked to do something off of an invade, it would have been SK Telecom, mostly because of the Braum. I'm actually starting to lose my voice, by the way, a little bit unfortunate. I am trying to keep hydrated. Looks like Misfit's going to start with red buff. And what this does is it enables Maxler to try to get some sort of pressure, maybe going up onto top lane. If Cho'Gath can actually manage to get a lead against Trundle. Trundle is not a champion that benefits very much from being behind. He's a champion that either needs to be even or ahead in order to have value or offer value to his team. So maybe, you know, Misfit's going to try to do something there. Now, I really like what Blank's doing here. The Rune Prison, and that's why you need Cleanse in order to make this work. And maybe he was just expecting that he could try to dodge Blank's EQ, but the problem is when Faker goes for the Rune Prison first, you can't actually get out of that. And so it enables just enough time for Blank to hit the EQ. They pick up the kill, and you know that's one of the reasons that you know there's an argument that can be made for Power of Evil having Cleanse in this matchup. A lot of people disrespect it against Ryze. Rune Prism is super obnoxious. You can see Faker not fucking around. Fucking they went into the backstage, and you know Koma's like, all right, we're gonna give him Ryze, and then you're gonna camp for him. You're gonna get him ahead. Goodbye Bang. It seems like they're a little bit more on point this game. And Ignar, he still has a proactive playmaking support, but it's going to be a lot more difficult than it is with a Blitzcrank or a Leona, especially with these team compositions, to you know find a way to crack SK Telecom's armor. And you can see Blank now, having gotten Faker ahead, he wants to just make sure that the bottom lane stays safe, because you can see that Huni up in top lane, he's gank immune. It's impossible for Huni to die at this stage. So he's playing around the right-hand side of the map. He's basically saying, hey, look, Sejuani's not here. Sejuani could be top lane, but if she is, it not very effective. Now they know where Sejuani is yet again. Keeping tabs on her. They've really constricted Maxler's jungle. And now that, you know, Huni obviously knows where Maxler is, you know, he's free to push in the wave, shove this all in. Alfari, though, doing a really good job in the CS department. Bottom lane obviously doing a lot better this game. Faker in a fantastic spot in mid, and you can see that he's also gank immune. Playing the lane out defensively, and you can see that Ignar just trying to assert some sort of mental pressure any way that he possibly can. Again, Infernal Drake, super important. Probably does mean that Blank and Faker want to put a lot more pressure on the right-hand side of the map. Interesting that Huni uses his teleport at this stage. This is actually, this is sort of like a Haunter teleport that I talked about earlier, where well, actually, no, it's not. So the teleport comes in at a time where you can see that the minion wave is actually really ugly. So if he doesn't actually teleport, this requires that Blank actually has to run up to top lane to fix or help crash him into the turret. So SK Telecom actually has to make a decision here. They have to ask themselves, is it worth losing 100 gold on minions in exchange for conserving the teleport? Do they need the teleport anywhere between 7 minutes and like 11 minutes? You know, is it very important for them to have the teleport available and handy at any of these times? If the answer is no, then they can actually use the teleport now and not go down the minus 100, and they can just actually have Huni push the wave into Alfari and cause the reset. Now, if they did need it between 7 minutes and 11 minutes or something, I'm not talking about 7-11, okay? Basically, what's going to happen is Blank actually needs to path like this, come up, and then he just needs to go like this, and that lets Huni take a little bit of a beating to shove the wave, crash it into the turret, bounce the reset, and then Blank just paths back into the right-hand side of the map, and that would enable them to conserve the teleport. So they teleport forward instead, because it seems like they're not saying that, you know, we need this teleport available to us during that time. Fortunately, Blank is in a pretty good spot, although it doesn't look like it actually mattered that much. Really surprising, actually. Oh, okay. The godsend. That's like something out of a fucking movie. That's like in the movie Doctor Strange or something, when the person like riff walks or some shit and like saves the person. I don't actually know if that happened in the movie. My mind could be playing tricks on me. Maybe that did happen. Not entirely sure, but that's definitely something like out of X-Men Apocalypse, when fucking Darkseid, not Darkseid, oh my god, that's DC. Apocalypse, I just said Apocalypse too. You know, he comes in and he uses his little teleport to get people out. Really, really bizarre right here. So basically the wave is being shoved in. You can see that Wolf, I don't know exactly why he's going tit for tat with Ignar. There's nothing to be gained over this. You're never getting vision control here. You see the size of the wave. You see that it's coming into the turret. There's no reason to go down and hit Ignar. Really bad play by Wolf, and that ends up getting him into this really ugly spot, and now Blank is like, I'll try to save you. And what ends up happening is they blow 2 flashes. Ignar and Hansama now have priority in bottom lane, and look at the byproduct of this. Bang actually ends up shoving the wave. And so basically now, if you're Misfits, you actually don't have to CS this wave that fast. You can actually just let these 3 spellcaster minions shove it into you, look at where the reinforcements are coming, and then this basically says to Bang, you know, hey, fuck you, you actually have to go recall. And when they actually go to recall, because Power of Evil could have been conveying to them that Faker is also recalling, or he's in need of a recall. Faker doesn't have teleport, Power of Evil does. Power of Evil could have shoved in mid lane, and then you can actually keep Sejuani, you know, on the right-hand side of the map, and you can look for a play against Infernal Drake using that teleport that you have available, because you know that Huni doesn't have teleport, and the wave is coming into you. So now what ends up happening is, even though Hansama wants a recall as well, once Bang channels his teleport, and you know that Jarvan and Wolf are recalled, etc., you have Power of Evil recall, you have him, you know, teleport in, and then you look to capture the Infernal Drake, you take a little bit of damage, the wave is coming into you, and then you just rotate Hansama and you rotate Ignar down to the wave. You have them eat 1 wave, 2 waves, and then you wait for the 3rd wave, you have them eat that as well. By this time, Sejuani's come off a recall path into the right-hand side jungle, and now Sejuani is there to stay there with Ignar, granting Hansama the necessary time that he needs to recall, so that Bang doesn't get any super big tower damage. And because obviously Blank doesn't have a right-side jungle, it would be a negative EV route for him to path onto the right-hand side of the map, especially after the fact that Infernal Drake has gone down. And so then what ends up occurring is that once Hansama is almost going to be back into the lane, Ignar backs up, he recalls, and now the problem is that Hansama is fresh off of a recall, no Infernal Drake, no threat of a jungler, and now Ignar is fresh off of a recall, and he's able to go into exactly whatever path he wants, which now means that Faker's under pressure, Huni's under pressure, and his route is concealed with Maxillor, because he's able to go exactly wherever he wants with them and try to establish vision control. I really like, this is something that SKT probably doesn't expect at all. Looking for a play onto Huni. Huni sniffs it out. They're going to actually get the top turret. Now, one of the things that I don't like about this, though, is that it gave SK Telecom the chance to actually respond with Infernal Drake. And then because we've already conceded that SK Telecom are in a scaling position, it ends the laning phase a little bit early, which I actually think is a little bit problematic for Alphari versus Huni. So this rotation is really weird. I think that what they're trying to do is they're trying to get Huni, and then if they do end up getting Huni, they can actually look to get 2 turrets, and then they trade bottom tier 1 and they trade Infernal, but ultimately that's actually a pretty bad trade. That's a really weird trade. I mean, it's a bad trade. It has variables that they can't account for. They're trying to surprise SK Telecom. SK Telecom doesn't assess the situation quickly enough, and they don't respond. And then they ended up looking for a kill onto Power of Evil, what actually played into Misfits' hands and enabled them to not be punished as heavily as they should have been. Although, in the end, it does look like SK Telecom are going to get the turret and they're going to get the Infernal Drake. So now, let's take a look at this. He has 86 right now, right? What the fuck does Tristana have? Tristana's probably well over 100. I don't know exactly how much AD Tristana has. So then you factor in exactly what the Infernal Drake's worth and the fact that it obviously is going to continue to ramp throughout the rest of the game. This is a really, really, really bad trade, and yeah, first turret for Infernal Drake is almost never worth it. Almost never worth it. I will be opening up worlds as soon as this game is done. Looks like Misfits now moving into Rift Herald. They want to capitalize on this. This is something that SK Telecom, because of the delay in tempo, does have a very difficult time reacting to. Now you can see that SK Telecom, they're trying to get the next objective, trying to get the top tier 1 turret for themselves, and you can see that Misfits now trying to respond and react to it. Faker playing very defensive. He knows that his job right now is basically just to not die, and then all that SKT needs to do is just continue to try to scale up. And Huni now actually behind. And teleport now coming in, so it looks like Bang is actually going to die. This is really well coordinated by Misfits. Teleport came in from Alfari, so it basically pincers Bang. He's unable to retreat backwards. Really, really good ward by Misfits. And now Hansam is staying top lane, and what he's trying to do right here is he's trying to twist the map. He's demanding that someone from SKT come up to top lane to defend that, and then they can look to get tempo advantage elsewhere on the map. So what they're going to do here is when SK Telecom devote members to top lane, they can look to make use of the Rift Herald. They could have actually recalled their bottom lane and gone bottom with the Rift Herald and tried to capitalize on the bottom tier 1 turret, and then maybe even gotten some damage on the bottom tier 2 turret, because that would further actually attack Huni and just continue to keep putting him in the ground. We already talked about earlier on how a Trundle that is really far behind is not really that useful of a Trundle. The problem with doing that, though, is it would require them to commit so heavily to that side of the map that their resources would be exhausted relative to SK Telecom coming straight off of the fountain, after or in the aftermath of it all, and then Dragon would be coming up, and SK Telecom would actually have priority on the Drake. So they cast the Herald in mid. Don't like that as much as I like it in the previous game, and the reason that I say that is because it is not as important for Rise or this SKT team composition to control the mid-tier 1 turret as it was for the previous SK Telecom team composition, especially relative to color. Thank you, Mike Young, for the host. 163 viewers. And Dragon now coming up in 30 seconds, and you can see that SK Telecom actually delayed on the recall. So regardless of if they would get Bang here, which obviously they do, it's really good to blow a lot of resources into trying to get him to just delay his recall, flash away, use his ultimate, use W, whatever. That way you can guarantee that you would be the ones that would actually get the Infernal Drake. So when we actually go back in time, we can actually evaluate, is it correct for SKT to try to stay here, with the fact that Infernal Drake is actually coming up. So Faker didn't have priority in mid lane. He re-arrives down to mid lane, and then SK Telecom actually stay for this wave. And the reason that staying for this wave is bad is, yes, a bounce is going to occur regardless, but this would actually create a delayed bounce. And so if you can create a delayed bounce, it's really bad for Misfits, because if you guys get the Infernal Drake again, that means that there's no objective onto the right-hand side of the map, and then Baron ultimately becomes the next objective. So Baron, going to end up spawning at 20 minutes or so. By the time that you end up eating the Infernal Drake, that means that the next dragon spawns about 3 minutes after Baron. You have this giant wave that comes up into your wave, and it ultimately creates a dark lane, or like a, I call it a dark lane. It's a lane that does not provide gold for one team. Or like a dead lane. And then what ends up doing, you recall, you run down to the Infernal Drake, you have control in mid, and then you're able to eat the Infernal Drake and then gain priority in bottom lane, re-go to mid, and then at this point, the wave is coming up to you in top lane, and then you can reassess exactly how you want to do your lane assignments. Really, really bad by SKT to push this final wave. It's a pretty big macro decision error, and then I have absolutely no clue why SKT would cut right instead of just retreating backwards. Because they know that Power of Evil and Alfari do not have teleport available, so it's not like they're running into any sort of flank teleport wards. And because of this, and because they greeted over that wave the minuscule amount of gold and the minuscule amount of XP, they end up losing the Infernal Drake, which, again, is integral to their team composition more so than their opponents. So now basically, all SKT needs to do is continue to stall out the game just a little bit, wait for Rise to get his next item. You can even actually continue to stall out the game for 3 items, and then you look to get the Mountain Drake. So all that they need to do, they're going to steal away the red buff. Don't entirely know why Huni just took it. They could have just given that to Bang, it would have refreshed it. And then Misfits yet again with some questionable map movements. We've seen this again, and we saw this in Game 2, we saw it in Game 3, didn't entirely see Game 1. Faker ulting in, having to flash away, uses Cleanse as well. And so Misfits actually got the better end of that. SKT also making some questionable movements. And now Misfits actually should be able to, yeah, they're going to be able to raise this turret. They're going to get an objective they should never have been able to get. And they propel themselves to a gold lead, but it doesn't actually matter that much because SK Telecom's team composition benefits more from gold. So Misfits still behind in the gold war, and then again, their Infernal Drake is worth less than SK Telecom's Infernal Drake. Hansama pushing out the wave. Really don't like doing stuff like this because SK Telecom has an option on how they want to handle it, but it does look like that Faker is hell-bent on getting to that 3rd item as fast as possible, so he's eating the wave. He's advancing forward with yet another wave. He's going to eat that as well. Really, really, really important for him to get to that Seraph's Embrace. I can't even imagine how much AP is being held up inside of that tier right now. Probably something unholy like 200. I actually don't know the exact number that Roa plus Morel and Omicron gives, but it has to be like 180 or like 200 or something. So Faker missing a lot of ammo. They end up getting a kill onto Faker, and we do know that he just came fresh off of a recall, although he didn't have any other item slots, but we can assume that he is not too far away from this Raph's Embrace. All that they had to do was actually stall out the game and then prevent this from happening. But they didn't do that, and now Huni ends up going down. He teleports right into his death, gets silenced, and this is... They have to juggle this perfectly. Alfari still even has his ultimate available, and you can see that they're trying to go in, but that's going to be a one-way trip. Flashes out for Bang. So it ends up not being a one-way trip in the end, but Misfits actually pick up the Baron, and it comes at a super important point in the game, because now the next dragon is coming up. So you can see that SK Telecom just being a little bit too quick. They're not being as patient as they should be. And so lots of deaths are occurring that should not be occurring, and Misfits are actually in the driver's seat. They should realistically be able to get bottom tier 1, be able to get bottom tier 2 with this Baron buff. They should be able to skew mid lane. Don't like how they're not skewing top lane. They're just letting Huni fix that. And so they're only going to have 2 lanes that they're able to make use of. And that's obviously not that great of a thing that, you know, they could have just simply avoided by having Alfari go somewhere sooner and then just, you know, reducing the speed at which they would push mid lane. Could have devoted other members elsewhere, but they're going to achieve the same thing. It's just slightly delayed, but obviously speed matters at this point. They're on a clock with that Baron. Baron buff only has 1 minute and 30 seconds left. You can see Alfari now trying to push up top lane. Now you just go 4 mid, then you unite with Alfari in top lane. You raise that last turret, propel yourself to about a 4 or 5k gold lead. And then, you know, Cloud Drake coming up. What you want to do if you're Misfits right now is you want to wait for that Cloud Drake to pass the threshold that's needed to force the Elder Dragon spawn, and then you kill it, because you need to get this game over with. You need to try to end the game off the Elder Dragon. What SK Telecom would or should want to do is they should actually try to delay the capture of the Cloud Drake. You know, contest them, dance with it, but do not actually take the Cloud Drake yourself. You know, or actually, if SK Telecom can get in position and kill it before the next dragon would spawn, that would be even more ideal. So right now, SKT are actually on a little bit of a clock. If they can, or, well, once the Cloud Drake comes up, oh, apparently it doesn't actually spawn in time. Never mind. Everything I just said is fucking wrong. Thought Cloud Drake was going to come up in time for a choice like that to occur. Not going to happen. That's fine. Blink goes down. I don't know why I'm like miscalculating the Drakes. That's okay. Blink ends up going down. They're in mid again. Holy shit, the tension. Max Lower ends up going down. And this is, I think Misfits just getting a little ahead of themselves. Bang and Faker saying, welcome to Korea. And Alfari, okay, gets a shitload of HP back off that Warmogs, but it's not really going to matter. And so that was a very much needed defense. So let's take a look at this. So Blank is actually down, and you can see that they're going in and they're rushing the turret, right? They're getting a little bit overzealous. They knock up the Trundle, and then you can see that they're all not on the same page. You can see they're all not on the same page. Ignite wasn't even cast. It was cast really late by Ignar. You can see they're all just like sort of on a different different page with what they want to do, getting a little bit too far ahead of themselves, and that's exactly what SK Telecom needed to get back into the game. And so this is what we were talking about like the Elder Drake and taking stuff slow. They should just manipulate the minions a little bit more, play to their strengths, play towards the next Baron. They're still going to have time until SK Telecom's items are all online and where it becomes really difficult to win a team fight. Alright, so let's fast forward ahead again. And now, yeah, Cloud was taken. I can't tell. It looks like it's a good lane for SKT because, yeah, all right, good bottom lane for SKT, good top lane for SKT. And Misfits. Holy shit. Faker letting Power Evil know that he's telling him, I'm not Perks. This is a real rise. And now SK Telecom are actually so far ahead. It should be impossible for SKT to actually lose at this point. They have a Mountain, they have an Infernal, they've come online, their engine is enabled, and now this is the part in the game that is super good. So you can see, top lane was perfect for them. If SKT gets the Baron, they can eat it. If they don't get the Baron, they can dance and they can have the shove. Two perfect lanes for SK Telecom, even if it's unintentional. And it's something that Misfits doesn't account for when they choose to take this fight. So you can see Huni, absolutely gigantic, mega knock-up, came out of Blank. Faker just fucking being slippery as fuck in the background. Yeah. And that was definitely a surprise motherfucker, ultimate. Champ Select is starting in the RNG Fnatic game, so I will speed this up. It doesn't actually look like to me that Fnatic should ever be able to win this game. I mean, all of Faker's items are online. Looks like he's going Death Cap. Elder Dragon coming up in 1 minute and 20. And so it's taking very bizarre engagements, but I guess it's what they feel is necessary. SKT, though, they're not manipulating the waves as good as they could. And you see Huni has that teleport available to him. And look at top lane. It's a little bit ugly. SKT basically saying that, you know, the time is now. We want to end this game. And then because of that, because of their greediness, bottom lane's ugly. Top lane's ugly. Huni, why are you shoving in the wave when your team is not going to make use of it? Now it bounces back into you. And now the minion wave is going to be extremely awkward. Because now, if they want to use top lane, they have to use this wave. Super ugly. Now they recall, they run to the Elder. They're deciding their fate with the Elder Dragon. As I say that, 666 for SK Telecom's gold. And now SKT have a really bad top lane. If they lost this fight with Power of Evil and Alphari having teleport with those minions, super bad. Looks like a huge fight taking place. They're completely clumped up. Rise ultimate, bring them right into the team. That could have been very risky, but ends up paying off. And now SK Telecom basically saying, you know what? We can actually calculate that we are going to end the game right here. Huni charging straight up. They know we got the Mountain Drake. We have the Infernal. Tristana still arrived. They have a red buff as well. And they have the Cannon Minion. They just raise the turrets, and that is the end of the game. So Misfits, yet again, you know, they're in command of the game, and then they make very questionable macro rotations with their lane assignments, and they would probably work if they were in EU. It would probably work against any of the lower tier, you know, Korean teams. But, you know, I think that decisions like that, they're not going to work against SKT. It's not going to work against Longzhu, not going to work against KT, not going to work against Afrika. They're going to be too adept at resisting. They're going to be too adept at this juggling of the game, and so Misfits ends up faltering. We will look at game number 5 after Fnatic RNG. And that is it for this.